is the difference between factor cost and market cost? In economics, these are the very basic concepts, and you can see these concepts being used when you study gross domestic product or GDP. Now, factor cost, also known as factor price, in simple terms, it is called as input cost or input price, which means that it refers to the price that is incurred by the producers during the process of production. For example, I am a producer. I am producing leather shoe. Now, to produce this leather shoe, what is my raw material? Leather. So now I have to purchase the raw material, for which I have to pay money. Now, I have to pay wages to the laborers for making that leather shoe. Now, in my factory, I have to pay what? Electricity bills, charges, etc. All these are what? These are called as input cost that is incurred by me as a producer to produce this particular leather shoe. So now, the cost incurred by the producer to produce one particular commodity is called as factor price or factor cost in simple term. That is why it is called as input cost or input price. Now, this is the price from the point of view of the producers. Why? Because the producers are incurring or bearing the cost to make this final product. And now, when I am producing this leather shoe, initially, if I am not having sufficient money, what I will do as a producer, I can go to a bank and get a loan. Let's say, for example, I've taken loan for 10 lakhs. Now, the government is giving me 2 lakh subsidies, which means that I need to pay back only 8 lakhs. So, this is promoting or motivating me to increase production. So, now factor cost or factor price includes another component called as subsidies. So, now in factor cost, it is always plus subsidies. Subsidies will be added. And now, in this particular factor cost or factor price, it is the price that is put for the product when it is produced within the factory. It is not left the factory. So now, there is no possibility of including a tax called as indirect tax, that is your GST today, which means the factor price or factor cost does not take into consideration indirect taxes such as GST. It is the factory price. Once this particular product leaves the factory and reaches the market, we the consumers purchase it. So now when you purchase the commodity, do you think you will be able to buy the commodity at a wholesale price? Definitely no. For example, at factory cost, the price of leather shoe was 100 rupees. Now when this particular leather shoe reaches the market, it is being sold at rupees 300. And this rupees 300 consists of what? The profit of the producer, wholesalers, retailers, including the so-called indirect taxes or GST. And we the consumers, we pay this higher prices to buy the commodity. So now, market cost is actually different from factor cost because market cost takes into consideration the indirect taxes. So that whereas factor price or factor cost, it do not take into consideration what? Indirect taxes. Rather, it only takes into consideration subsidies. That is why I told you that factor price is the price from the point of view of the producers or the suppliers. Now, having said that, back to market cost. So now the price paid by the consumers while purchasing the commodity is called as market cost or market price in simple term. And this consists of indirect taxes. Now, this particular market cost is also known as ex-factory cost because it does not have the same price as the product was in the factory. It includes so many other charges once it is sold, kept for sale in the market. Now, the formula for market cost or market price goes like this. MP is equal to factor price minus subsidies plus indirect taxes. Whereas in factor cost, what happens? You will plus subsidies and you will minus indirect taxes. In market cost, you will add the indirect taxes and minus the subsidies. These are the major point of differences that you need to keep in mind while you study factor cost and market cost. Now, the current affairs of this is associated with gross domestic product. Before 2015, when GDP was calculated, it was calculated using factor cost, which means factory price. No indirect taxes was taken into consideration. But after 2015, when there was a change in the method of calculation of GDP, the Indian government changed the method of calculation of GDP from factor price to market price. So today it is GDP at market price and not factor price, which means that it is more realistic in nature. When the consumer is buying a commodity, he or she is paying what? The tax also. They are feeling the pain or the pinch of paying higher prices to buy the commodity. So now that should be added. That value should be added. Where? In the GDP calculation. That is why not only GDP, even every kind of income, national income, GDP, GNP, whatever, everything today is calculated based on market cost or market prices since 2015. This is the current affairs of these two concepts. I hope it is crystal clear for all of you. Stay tuned for more such sessions, and you can also put out your feedbacks in the comment box if you have certain preferences for some topics to be covered and also your doubts or queries. I'll get back to you in the upcoming videos with the same. Thank you and Jai Hind.